Good morning and welcome all the delegates from outside in our state as one of the partner organizer, Indian Medical Association, Manipur State Branch, and I am the president of this state branch. So welcome to this AHPICON NA2 and to Imphal. Today I am coming here to plead to the delegates, through the delegates and to the general public, that the climate action has reached to this far corner of the country or small dot in the globe, and we should not leave behind the impact of climate change on mental health. That is very, very important, and I'll be sharing some of the thoughts from the national policy on climate change and mental health. As it was described before also, the climate change refers to gradual changes in the meteorological parameters like temperature, humidity, atmospheric composition, etc. in the world. The effects of this phenomenon may not be visible on day-to-day basis, as the cause and effect are distinct in terms of space and time. Impact of climate change on mental health is the area I'm going to dwell on. The natural factors such as temperature, humidity, wind, storms, droughts, these are natural, as well as our human activities in this modern advanced society, industrialization, construction, vehicular pollutions, and sometimes the crop residue burning, very common in Delhi and Punjab, Haryana area, leading to air pollution. The previous speaker has rightly pointed out, have consequences on mental health, not only in physical health, in terms of depression, anxiety disorders, and suicide, etc. There is a schematic representation of the impact of climate change on mental health. Climate change will impact on the mental health in two different ways, direct and indirect. As it was also mentioned that heat, the global warming, is leading to many physical morbidity and even mortality. And before that, there are lots of discomfort we have to adopt. And also, through indirect, there are lots of disasters. For example, we can take up flood as one of the example, drought as one of the example, and it will lead to displacement and the migration. It was also, Madam has highlighted nicely, and loss of loved ones in the disaster. Many loss happen, permanently handicapped, disabled, and inability to earn livelihood, they become independent, and long-lasting economic problems are there. Displacement also carries from the culture and traditional values of that particular person, and he has to adapt in a new place. And all these things collectively will be very prone to increase the chronic stress level of the individuals, and which will ultimately lead to mental disorders like anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorders, substance abuse, domestic violence, and of course, suicide. I need not describe all these disorders. Many of us might have at least some idea of this. And there is increasing evidence that extreme weather events can trigger post-traumatic stress disorder, major depressive disorder, anxiety, and of course increased substance abuse. In order to cope with the increased stress, many people have adapted or misadapted to substance abuse as a means to adapt the stress from time to time. And complicated grief means grief, prolonged pathological grief, and it cripples the life of that individual. Survival guilt children, my spouse unfortunately expired, and then the survivor will have the guilt that if I do that, if I did that, if I come back early, and she could have been saved like that. It's called survival guilt. It's also really a torture. Recovery fatigue. After a struggle, the person has recovered, and that causes lots of fatigue after that, recovery fatigue, and suicidal ideas, and ultimately suicide. These are related to climate change. Globally, the prevalence of mental health issues is extremely high, and it is estimated to be around 1 in 10. And it is without considering the added mental health consequences of changing climate conditions. That means it will have an increased burden on mental health. Coming to our country, it is about 11% in the point prevalence. Today, when we look at it, it will be around 11. And then in Manipur, it is around 13%, and we estimate that 1 in 8. And this is before COVID and before this conflict, and now the climate change. So how resilient we are to resist all these onslaughts on our mental health? That is the big question. The lack of attention to mental health is of particular concern in the field of climate change. Mental health, given the evidence that psychological impacts from any form of disaster exceed physical injury by 40%. I love to repeat again the impact on physical health and the impact on mental health. Mental health impact is 40% more than the physical health. In fact, every change in our stages, and every change in our ambience, environment will impact on the mind and the mental well-being. So it is no surprise that in the case of climate change leading to disasters, the impact on mental health will be very, very heavy. Heat-related mental health morbidities, ma'am has rightly said, described in detail, and it will save me some time. But people with mental illness are 3 times more likely to risk death from a heat wave than those without mental health, ma'am. Hot temperature increases discomfort, hostility, aggression, and possible violence. This is the mental health aspect of heat wave. And hotter cities were found to be more violent than cooler cities. The increased heat-related violence is more significant in the hot summers and shows increased rates in the hotter years. Wildfires became the extreme heat directly impacted mental health. Studies in communities at risk of bushfires found higher incidence of depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. So this is the mental health aspect. Heat waves, Madam has described about the physical activity, physical changes. Heat stress directly caused by heat waves has been associated with mood disorders, anxiety, and the related consequences. Extreme heat events and humidity have increased hospital admissions for mood and the behavioral disorders, including schizophrenia, mania, and neurotic disorders. These are the direct health consequences. I would like to describe that climate change can range from mild stress, sleep disturbances to clinical disorders, which I have mentioned before. During pregnancy, exposure to heat waves has been related to low birth weight, increased incidence of preterm birth. Effects during childhood and adulthood comprised behavioral and motor problems and reduced IQ, intelligence quotient, reduced schooling and economic activities. That ma'am also said school has to be shut down. Disasters in India are plenty in the last 1 or 2 decades. So all of these has been, or many of them has been studied from mental health impact point of view, and I will not be having the luxury of presenting all of them because of paucity of time, but in general I will be representing how it happens, how it impacts the mental health. Drought is one of the most well-documented climate hazards indirectly influencing mental health. Long-term effects of drought include scarcity of food, water supplies, affect land-based workers' economy, and ultimately the mental well-being. There is evidence indicating increased numbers of farmer suicides in India in areas of prolonged droughts. At least 1,12,000 people working in the agricultural sector have committed suicide in the past decade in India. So it's not a small number. Migration challenges the identity, sovereignty, and heritage of people who have to leave their homesteads and homelands. It also challenges the integrity and continuity of people's traditional ways of life. And there is a threat to community health, for example, increased criminal behavior, violence, aggression in response to stressors related to climate change. Okay. This is a little congested slide. I would just summarize. Mental health disorders like PTSD, depression, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder will lead to behavioral sign symptoms like anxiety, annoyance, poor sleep quality, cognitive impairment, distress, and nostalgia, and which will ultimately lead to individual consequences and the collective consequences in the community. Stress is the main impact, and through stress, all those mental health disorders will come. And heightened social instability, increased levels of interpersonal aggression, interpersonal relationship will be impaired, and increased rates of crime and violence will be significantly increased. That was the highlight. And now coming to what we can do in an individual level. If we adopt measures which are safe for the environment, this will give us a sense of satisfaction, pride, which will in turn enhance our positive well-being. If we take part in action, climate action, take part in the local activities which will help in the climate change management, that will give us some credibility and pride that will give us positive well-being, sense of positive well-being. If feeling overwhelmed due to adverse effects of climate change, talk to someone you trust and see how the situation can be handled in different way. Keeping contact with family members, friends, and organizations handy in case you need to reach out. Means disasters comes without warning. So if we have some contacts, we can fall to them. And for example, we call it emotional reserve. If we have some problem, you can contact with some close friends, relatives, or confidential people like professionals, that we always have an advantage on the others who do not have. Similarly, we will have a plan that in case of such an eventuality, I will fall into this, I will call this and that. 4, keep a journal of your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors if you are facing a mental health concern, like anxiety, depression, stress, etc. It might come in a somatic form, like physical symptoms like breathlessness, restlessness, mild giddiness, chronic headache, aches and pains, tingling numbness, and difficulty in breathing, shortness of breath, like this. It might also indicate some chronic stress, which are leading to just physical symptoms. Seek treatment if you and someone you know is battling with mental health crisis. Don't delay, please. Proper rest, exercise, eating healthy food as and when possible is also beneficial, means healthy lifestyle. And yoga is also recommended by many. Meditation is also very important. It's the only thing we cannot do regularly. Consider non-traditional form of care such as travel, spirituality, community-based program, etc. Keep an eye out for symptoms of behavioral and psychological changes in your kids, inability to kids as well as the extreme of ages, differently abled and pregnant women, etc. Inability to talk, bedwetting, worry or panic while not in danger, self-harm behaviors, and some examples of such changes amongst the children are significant telltale signs. Look out for authentic information issued by the government. Engage in active listening with those who would like to talk to you. Online platforms and peer support groups can help in the management of mental health issues. Take-home message will be climate change is an urgent global challenge. We should not ignore the mental health aspects of impacts of climate change on human health along with the other concerns. While the challenge is significant, we have the knowledge and capability to address it if we act decisively. These are the references. Thank you very much.